Hello.
Okay, there we go. All right. Okay, we'll call the April 7th, 2025 Building and Grounds meeting to order. We'll start with roll call. Bruce Schubert.
Johnson. Juan Fuentes.
Bob Halverson.
Steve Magazzini.
Are there any public comments tonight?
If there's no public comments.
Okay, Steve, let's.
All right, item 1 is the Career Technical Center update.
Sure.
Dr. Halverson.
Yep, and I'm going to take that one. So our operations and finance team has worked very closely with our architects and construction management team to just dive into what we can do for some further value engineering with that. And we wanted to make sure we were looking at saving costs, but making sure that we did not sacrifice the functionality of the building there. So we really wanted to dive into it from that lens as far as what's best for kids. We looked at the site work. We looked at a reduction in square footage and general reconfigurations, as well as possibly changing some construction materials to eliminate some of that cost there. As we went through, we didn't deem all of the options viable, but we did have the opportunity to really dive in and take a look. So Andy, if you could go to the page that says Value Engineering Options Rough Magnitude Draft Under Review. Yep, that's it right there. Are you able to zoom in at all, Andy? Perfect. So first couple things up top there. We took a look at the contingency, and we had a 10% contingency in place for both of the bid packages we were looking at. Bid package 1 was going to be when we went out for the renovations of the site, building out the actual structure, the exterior of the structure there, and we reduced that down to 5% to help bring that cost down a little bit. We did not do that for bid package number 2, because when we go out for bid package number 2, when we look at the interior, there are a lot of unknowns with that, so we kept it at 10%. But that did bring us down by roughly $1.9 million there. We also looked at some of the, taking down some of the costs for concrete, landscaping, demolition, and some of the price reductions there. And we were able to kind of sharpen our pencils there and come off with another $675,000 that we were able to reduce. Then in addition to that, when we looked at the scope updates, going with precast and masonry to get rid of some of that steel there, we were able to bring that down by roughly $25,000 as well. So those are the things we looked at right off the top, and we had FH Passion and Cordigan Clark kind of working together in the background on that side of it. Then we also took a look at reducing the parking lot. And Andy, if you can skip to the next slide real quick, and then we'll jump back. And if you look at that next slide there, off to the right-hand side of that slide, off to that right-hand side of that slide, we could look at reducing that parking lot and save us about $90,000 as well. It would still have the functionality we needed to get buses in there, in and out from the high school. It would still give us enough parking in the evenings if we look to expand it for our community to be able to use as well. But we went through and counted up the actual spots there and figured that we could take those out without actually impacting the functionality of the parking lot as a whole there. So that's a $90,000 reduction there. And if you could skip back. We considered reducing the storm and detention system there, but when we do that, if we look to expand parking in the future, it would make it so we could not expand the parking there. So we decided that that probably wasn't a viable option because it would kind of tie our hands in the future there. The big savings that we looked at when you looked at the actual physical space there is if we remove the aviation space, that saves us roughly $2.6 million. And it saves not only on the space, but the overhead hangar door was $350,000. So it saves all of that combined. Andy, can you skip forward 2 slides for me real quick as well? And if you look at that, that open area right in the middle there is the aviation space was at the far right-hand side when you're looking at that rendering there. So it was at the far right-hand side. When we pulled the aviation space out, we took the other spaces on the first and second floor and slid them to the right there. And the reason we did that is that gives us a viability in the future. If we decided we wanted to expand the building, it's easier to make that addition in that open area there that's kind of marked out by a box with an X through it. So that would be open land at that point in time right there is what that would be. But that does save us $2.6 million. That would be the only program we would look at eliminating based off our initial scope there. And part of the rationale when we look at that, we know there could be a supply and demand when it looks at aviation mechanics, but we also have to consider the fact that most of those jobs would be in towards the city at Chicago, at O'Hara Midway, and just considering the fact of the local impact on our community there as well. So we took a look at that. Andy, can you skip back to the numbers slide, please? When we looked at removing the wood shop and welding, we didn't think that was a viable option. That would have saved us $3.7 million, so we weren't making that recommendation. Same thing with the lecture hall. We did want to make sure that we had the opportunity to provide a large enough space to host meetings there, to host night events, to allow our kids to showcase their talents. So we didn't think it was a viable option to take the lecture hall out. The other thing we had to really take into consideration when we looked at that as well is if we take that lecture hall out, that eliminates our shelter in place area because it was before, it could have been in that aviation area. But if we're taking out the aviation area as well as the lecture hall, we no longer have that space that's required in the storm shelter at that point. Next thing, if you're looking down there, if you take a look at reducing the kitchen square footage and the equipment, we looked at reducing that equipment, so it would not be a production site where we produce meals there, but we would actually have them produced at other sites and then brought in similar to the way we do in our other schools. And that gives us about $950,000 in savings. If we only wanted to reduce the kitchen equipment and keep the square footage there, we'd be looking at $200,000 in savings. So there's not as much savings there. And then finally, one of the ideas that the team came up with there was if we went with some precast planks in lieu of the metal decks and joists, especially with what's going on with tariffs, et cetera, at that point, we'd be looking at another $150,000 in savings. So when you take a look at the whole there, we were at roughly $52.5 million. With these reductions, we'd be down to about $45 million for the actual construction costs there. Now, obviously, at the bottom of that page, there are some pricing exclusions that are put in there. The train equipment, when we were looking at our HVAC system, that's already been pre-purchased, and we wouldn't have to go with the funds out of the bonds for that. Classroom furnitures and equipment, and just a reminder, that's just the classroom furniture and equipment. That wouldn't be anything as far as lathes or anything like that when we were looking at welding. We'd be looking at about $450,000 in costs there. You can see that we did incorporate, just because we don't know where the tariffs are going to be at, we did incorporate about $200,000 to $250,000 for tariffs there as well. So that's kind of an overview of what we'd be looking at as far as the price reductions. The reason we wanted to bring it forward to the board committee tonight was just to come up with some type of recommendation so we can continue to have our construction management team and our architects continue with the renderings and moving forward. And I'll pause real quick. Go ahead, Mr. Magazine.
And I just wanted a couple other comments with regards to having the functionality of the building. Our goal had always been the 500 to 600 kids being brought over, and even with these reductions, it would still house that many students. We didn't touch the classrooms on the second floor because we wanted to have a space where the kids come over for the day. We wouldn't have to worry about bringing them back and forth during the school day. So they would have their regular math and science courses at that building when they're there. And the other piece was the cafeteria. Although the back of the house kitchen area was reduced, the front of the house where the students sit is still intact, so it would hold the number of students that we're expecting.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying. And it would leave us the ability to still have our health science cluster, information technology cluster, manufacturing cluster, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics cluster, as well as a transportation, distribution, and logistics cluster. It would just be that transportation side would be geared to the automotive side, no longer geared towards anything with aviation at all at that point in time. So if we take a look at it, we were able to cut the cost by roughly $7 million to get us down around $45 million currently. And we just wanted to share that with the B&G committee, see what questions you may have, and see if we could have some clearance to continue kind of working on the renderings there. One of the things we need to truly consider is now that we've kind of had to press pause for a little bit, that fall of 2026 opening would be very difficult. And quite honestly, we would probably incur some additional costs with that because we'd have to work through the winter, et cetera, with that. So there's additional costs associated. So we would be projecting a fall of 2027 opening. Not that we wouldn't have a goal of having the building done sooner, but it would provide us opportunity to hopefully get that building done sooner in the spring, and then also allow us some real time to transition our programming, et cetera, over there for hopefully a fall of 2027 opening at that point in time.
I do have a question. You mentioned that the revised budget is 45 million. Option 5 with the lecture hall. So out of the 45 million, do you have it removed then?
No, I'm sorry. So, Mr. Swentis, if you look at that's still included. So the only things that would be removed would be the things that are in that savings included column there to the left.
Okay.
Anything to the right, those were considerations that we took on. We did have FH Passion and Cordigan Clark work on kind of a list of potential options for us. And then we dialogued as a team. We've had about 4 meetings since then to go through and talk about what specifically we valued and what we wanted to hold on to. But if we were looking at pulling out that lecture hall, that would be another $2 million in savings. But it does provide some obstacles for us at that point in time because it limits kind of that storm shelter area that we could look at as well.
Understood. Thank you.
And within all these costs now, are the costs in for the road work and things like that, are they still in there?
So the costs for the road work are built into there currently, and that was for, we had some ongoing dialogue about potentially partnering with individuals to look at that, municipalities to look at that, but it is still built in at all our costs right now. So that is built into there at this point in time. There is a potential that maybe we could get some cost savings down the road with that if we're able to partner with the municipalities there as well, but we didn't want to project that forward.
How how about all the other things that Bernie was talking about acquiring? I don't know what he
The-
needed.
the
but he had
easement we were
some
looking at there?
Easements
Yeah.
and things like that.
So we don't have an actual number on that. Bernie's still working on that. Would that be correct, guys?
Yes, it's still in play that we were getting the valuation of the land, of the small area of land that we're looking for to create an easement with the owner.
And that's really a site easement. It wouldn't be any more than that. It would just be making sure that we acknowledge that they could never build anything in the future on there to block that sight line. And we don't anticipate a ton of costs with that, but it is still a work in progress at this point in time.
What was the original concept for the parking lot? How many spots and how many are being reduced? Because I know over the years, many of our facilities we've added on to, we have, parking issues. So I'm just curious about that, 'cause it's a-
Steve, do you have
it's
those
in-
actual numbers, or if not, Rich, do you
in
remember what they were?
relation to the overall budget, it's,
Yeah, it's
so,
$90,000.
I mean,
Yeah. And that,
what's the squeeze on this? What are we,
We have the exact number I don't have in my mind, but I know that we are above and beyond what is required to have for parking. And so that was an opportunity just for us to look at other cost saving measures. And yes, it's not a huge sum of money, but it's,
but it could be a huge headache. So
yeah.
I'm trying to understand, do we really remove that?
To comment on that, that's something we can easily do a addendum on or alternate on and get a price for that.
Yeah.
Get real numbers bid day, we can see what the value is, and then we decide if we want to reduce.
Yeah.
And we can get you the numbers between now and tomorrow.
Yeah, I think that would be wise,
We have that flexibility.
yeah. Because we have to be considerate of our adjacent facility as well and overflow going over there and creating issues for them and, so.
But
Definitely a
this-
good point.
But this is probably a site that, for the most part, the kids are gonna be bused over there, correct?
That's what the intention is, to have them report to the high school in the morning and then be bussed over there and then be over there for the entire day and then bus back in the evening because
this-
they might be in after-school
Yeah,
sports,
the students have to
athletics.
get back for after-school activities. They'll go back over.
And I think I had mentioned this before, we do need to figure out what we're gonna do with the existing high school when we free up some of those spaces. So I think we still need that number, to see where we're really at and how this fits into the budget. And then Mike Engel's not here, I guess, but, oh, there he is. Okay, but, and how is the 45 million now fitting in? I know we have 40 million in bonds, so. So now we have $5 more million to add to the budget, so.
And we have had preliminary conversations about what the high school needs for whether that's looking at additional classroom space, if it's looking at additional or moving classrooms in order. I know that the concept of having pods of a dean, a social work, and maybe an assistant principal out into the different areas of the school, because currently they're, for the most part, they're close all in one area. Where this way, if we had different color houses to split the school up, and then you'd have pods of administrators and administrative staff out and about through the high school, which I think makes sense with a school the size of ours. So that's something that we've talked about, and we have to continue to look at that.
Well, but there is still a lot of heating and air conditioning work that needs to be done at the high school, and I think somebody said that it would be beneficial to us to do the heating and air conditioning work at the same time we were remodeling those classrooms, correct?
Yes, so we would need to get an understanding and really work on this in the near future so that in the second and third phase of the high school HVAC, we could, outfit what we need. So if we were taking a classroom, just say on the second floor, on the far east side, and want to make that a pot of offices, we would need to know that so that they can run the correct HVAC there. And so that's something that we're starting to work on and take a look at. We've had conversations with the high school about what their thoughts are with regards to having some of that space and where we would utilize classrooms or change up classrooms.
Any other questions at all?
For right now, that's a good start. I would still like to get a little more closer to the main number, but sounds like that's a moving target.
Yeah, so can we recap what the next steps will be and kind of timeline then?
Yeah.
So,
Actually, Rich, you want to come up real quick just to talk a little bit about specifically what we were talking as far as once we have the clearance to move forward and the timeline with that, please?
So our next steps are to start talking about these changes, working through the budget and adjusting the plans based off of that. So as we go back, we'll adjust the plans, look at the price, and then we'll come back to you. We can come back next month with a basic schedule of where we're looking at going out for bid, where we're at, and then we'll continue to bring you guys adjusted prices as we develop the plans and come up with a new pricing. So.
Would we be able to, and I guess this would be for the committee to decide, we were close to going out to bid with the first phase, and I believe we would be able to do that fairly quickly, or is there still some adjustments even though the phase one was complete,
There are some adjustments that need to happen, so we are going to need a little bit of time to adjust the plans accordingly. Some areas will adjust quickly, other areas are going to take a little more time. The kitchen area is one of those. We're going to reduce the size and we got to push and pull things around. So over the next month, we'll start looking at how much time we think we need to do that, as well as the construction schedule to get this out and what that time frame will be. So as we're working through those adjustments, we'll work on the budget at the same time. We'll be working with FH Passion along the way so we can keep giving you updates, see where we're able to crunch the numbers and squeeze them down where possible.
and I think the one piece to remember about the weather here is whether we break ground in the late summer or early fall, or if we're not ready and we break ground next spring, either scenario, we would still have the time to open in the fall of 27.
Right. So the schedule that we'll provide will take weather into account, kind of where we're hitting as we go out. So obviously we don't want to start putting foundations in the winter. It's not smart. But if we can start early enough, get the building enclosed, then maybe we do that. And then that way we can work through the winter. So that's the piece that we're going to work with FH Passion and determine what the best process forward is to save you guys as much money as possible.
All right, item 3B is the summer work bid results. We have a site improvement bid result. We did go out to bid for site improvements. We only had one bidder, and we did, when we had, originally, we had a mandatory pre-bid walkthrough, and we only had one bidder show up for that. So as a result of that, we extended the bidding window, and we also reached out to a number of companies in the area to make sure that they were aware that they could still bid even though they didn't go to the pre-bid walkthrough. But when we opened the bid, we did only have one bidder. I would say the information's in your packet. We did come substantially below what we had projected for the 5-year plan for site work. So the number came in favorably, specifically to what we budgeted.
Yeah.
The Bardwell flooring, so that the Bardwell classroom on the 3rd floor has very old carpeting throughout, as well as the carpeting in the auditorium. So we went out to bid to have that replacement, and the bid information is in your packet. We did have 4 bidders, and we looked at the most responsible bidder, and again, came in well below what we had budgeted. Any questions on that? And then finally, the door replacement. So we are continuing to put on a cycle looking at the exterior doors throughout the district and making sure that all of our doors are have integrity and are obviously are safe for locking purposes. And so we have a few buildings that we would like to replace their the exterior doors on a number of buildings. And then we went out to bid for that. We did have 3 bidders, and based on our needs, that number came in a little bit higher than what we were budgeting, but overall, we believe that, you know, it's a fair bid to take care of the doors that we believe are needed. Any questions on that? And then we would like, if it's okay with the board, to bring the door replacements and the flooring to the full board this evening because of ordering purposes.
Any objections?
No.
No.
Thank you. Item 3C, the custodial bid supplies. If you recall, we went out to bid last year for custodial supplies, and we had gotten a 3-year bid. And the board had asked if we could just accept it for 1 year, and then we were going to go back out to bid this year. But I think with the current situation in the country, we AJ had reached out and talked with our current vendor and asked if they would be willing to uphold the bid for the last 2 years. So, and they agreed. So we would be able to add those 2 years back in that we had originally went out to bid for last year. And I do think based on the current situation, it may be better for us to go ahead with the bid that we had gotten last year and carry it out for 2 years, as opposed to taking a chance of going out to bid and then getting hit with higher pricing.
I
Any
agree.
questions on that?
No.
Thank you. Next item is student hotspots. This is an informational item, just to let you know, our information with regards to the hotspot and services that came up, and we ended up going with a different company. So this is informational, just to let you know that we are going to move forward with AT&T as opposed to our previous company. And we did that for a number of reasons. The pricing actually was better, as well as the service agreement that we have. Any questions on that?
No.
The air purifier cell replacement. So our air purifiers that we put in now, it's been almost 4 years. They have a replacement filter cell. And so previously we had purchased with COVID, with ESSER funds, we had purchased additional cells that we can use to replace. They're good for about 18 months. And so we have about 75% of the cells needed to replace throughout the district. We are asking if we could purchase the remainder of the cells that we need to replace, and that would carry us through 2026 with having our purifiers in the classrooms and offices and cafeteria spaces. And so we would make this purchase, we would switch them out this summer, and that would carry us through the end of 2026. And at that time, we can, evaluate if we want to continue with them. The cells, all of the cells together are about 250,000. But they're good for 18 months. That's one of them, yes. That for the larger spaces, cafeterias and a space like this, we have this large one, but typically the classroom ones that cover that classroom space size are a little bit, like a speaker size.
Okay.
Any questions on that? No.
You mentioned reevaluating that at some point.
I think since we have 75% of the cells, I think it would be good to run these continually for another year and a half. Once we have used up the cells that we have plus this addition, in a year and a half, we'll have to decide if we believe that we still want to use them or not.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's a good plan.
you know, I think that we've used them, and I think it was important to use them through COVID times and coming back. But as we get further and further from COVID, I'm just questioning whether, you know, we have to decide if the cost is worth that piece.
And what the guidance at the time is, right?
The guidance is different than it was for sure, yeah.
Okay. All
Can
right.
we possibly eliminate some of these? I think we got them. We seem to have them all over the place. Do we
I-
need all of these?
I mean, we have them in every classroom, which we would need those individually. And again, we have them in mostly all the spaces, so every office. And I guess we could look at seeing if we could eliminate some. However, I think if the goal is to continue to run, circulate that air and purify that air, I think it would be hard to figure out areas that don't need them.
Thanks, Steve.
We have a resolution for the sale of property. We have one non-operable van and then athletic items and old broken band items. No questions? And then the final is a work order summary, and I think that AJ has just a quick update with that.
Everybody. I just wanted to review our work orders for March. For our delivery team, we had about 169 work orders, of which 64 were completed on time and 36 were completed past due or overdue. For the sake of overdue, we have it set to 7 days in the system. So anything that essentially goes past 7 days, it defaults to that overdue setting. That was the delivery and custodial. For our maintenance work orders for the month of March, we had 199 work orders come in, of which 61% were completed on time, 39% were completed past that 7 mark due. A lot of those ones for maintenance, we have to defer to our night guys to getting in there. Obviously, they can't work at certain times when the staff and students are in there. So a lot of those are contingent on accessibility. I do know last month a specific question came up about the high school work orders. I do have those figures. Of the 368 total work orders that came in last month for March, 48 of those were from the high school. Of those 48, 29 were completed on time and 19 overdue. A lot of the ones that were overdue, a lot of the types of work orders that we get at the high school are event-based and setups. So it could be something that someone is putting in for 2 or 3 months from now, or it could be for the next month. So that's why we have a lot of those. And again, with that, we are full staff with our maintenance mechanics now. So our hope is to get some more force over to the high school. Previously, we had a couple guys on days and a couple at nights. And right now we've been floating with just one guy. So we're looking to get some more help stationed there at night to continue to work on those work order numbers for there. Are there any questions about the work order summary?
AJ, could you talk briefly just about kind of what your leadership team does when they touch base with the different school principals, et cetera, and kind of checking in on some of those things? Because you kind of educated me through that process when we were talking the other day.
Yeah, so our supervisors, as well as Nick and myself, routinely meet with the building administration to go over any issues, follow up with our staff, specifically the work orders. We go through and we want everything to be work order based, so our guys have a tracking of what's being done, so their time could be accounted for. And essentially with the work orders, our guy on a weekly basis will follow up. If there's something that really isn't work order based, we'll touch base with the building admin to let them know, this is either, a lot of them usually come in, they're either capital projects or something that isn't able to be a work order. So with that, we'll go through weekly, follow up on old work orders, prioritize those oldest ones, and then obviously safety and security would take the priority over everything else. So we kind of just tackle it week by week, and our goal is to just button up those numbers and reduce it to getting rid of the oldest ones first while still focusing on safety and security.
Thank you.
Anything else?
No.
No, I think we were all set.
Okay, we're adjourned 6:30.
Thank you.
Thank you.